Hi guys, welcome to another How to English video. Now, if you really want to make huge progress in two areas of English that are really important, grammar and vocabulary, this is the video that you need to watch. So, lots of my students ask me this question. They often say, Adam, what is the best way to master English grammar? What is the best way to be able to use grammar without making mistakes? How can I learn more vocabulary in English? Well, I always recommend one exercise for this, which is the absolute king of vocabulary exercises, and it's fantastic for grammar as well. That exercise, it's really simple, but it's fantastic, is reading. Now, when I say reading, I don't just mean reading anything. I'm talking about fiction. You want to read a novel of some kind. Why is it so fantastic? In fact, it's much, much better than, say, watching films and series or watching TV or any kind of listening exercise, which are also very, very good. And I'll speak about those in other videos. Reading really is the one where you can really focus on the grammar and vocabulary. Now, what makes it so good as a way to master grammar and vocabulary in English? Well, the best way to explain it is by comparing it to listening. So when you're listening, it can be, let's give an example of you're listening to the radio. Okay, you're listening to the news on the radio. Now, the brain is very, very clever. The brain's only priority, the brain's number one priority is to save energy. Now, the brain uses up 20% of all the oxygen in the body. So it's a very, very hungry organ. So like all things that use a lot of energy, your first priority is to be as efficient as possible, use the least amount of energy possible to get your objective. Now, what the brain does to do this is very clever, when it's listening, when you're listening, the brain only processes the minimum required to understand the message. So, in fact, this is happening right now as you're listening to me. Your brain is only trying to listen to what it considers the main words, the most important words of each sentence, so that you can get a general understanding. Now, the reason it does this is because instead of processing every word the brain hears, the brain will understand the global message, the general meaning of what you're saying, just from focusing and trying to find what it thinks are the most important words in a sentence or paragraph. So that's very, very good and very useful for the brain in general, because it can save energy. It doesn't need to process everything that comes in through the ears. But it's really bad for you, and it's really bad when you're trying to learn another language because you're trying to improve your English. And when the brain is only focusing on those important words and forgetting everything else, well, you're missing lots and lots of learning opportunities. So that's why listening isn't fantastic when it's just general listening. Of course, you should do that kind of listening, but it can't constitute most of your contact with English. Now, if we look at reading, for example, the brain can't escape processing everything it sees. So when you're reading a book, your brain sees and processes every single word. Now, this is incredible. It's a very tiring thing to do in the beginning if you haven't read it in English before, but you very quickly get used to it and the brain becomes accustomed to processing all the information. So it's really, really good. Let's take the example of grammar. We'll look at vocabulary after. It's fantastic for grammar because when you're listening to me right now, you probably aren't recognizing exactly what tense I'm using. If you think of the last sentence, what tense did I use? You probably can't remember. The reason is that your brain was only extracting and processing what it considers are the most important words of that sentence to understand the general meaning. That is why you can understand me in general as you're listening to me now. But you're going to be missing lots and lots of information, like prepositions, auxiliary verbs, the tenses. Your brain will not process this at all. Now, if you don't process this, you're not going to learn it. So that's a problem. It's fantastic that you can understand me and get the general understanding, but it's bad because you're going to be missing a lot of information. Now, when you read, you've got this text, you've got the words, you will be forced to process every single word. So you will see the auxiliary verbs, you will see the prepositions, and you will see the word order and the sentence structure, and you'll be processing all of this. Now, what makes it good for grammar is that your brain will be processing it, but you won't be processing it consciously. When you're reading, you're not going to stop at every sentence and think, ah, look, it's the present perfect continuous, and they use the preposition on and then in. It's a subconscious thing. What happens is, while you read the book, you will be seeing correct versions of everything in English. So you'll be reading correct English, and subconsciously your brain will associate what you read with what is correct. That means that when the grammar that you learn from reading isn't consciously learning grammar like when you take a grammar book and you learn tense by tense each grammar point. It won't be like that, but you'll be exposed to correct English over 50, 80,000 words in an average book. What that means is that when you're in a conversation or you're wanting to write something, you want to produce something in English, things will just start to sound correct. You'll be speaking and you'll say, that's correct, I know it's correct, but I don't know why it's correct. Now, that's the thing that you should be aiming for. And the reason for that is that that's exactly what native speakers do. When we're speaking, when we're writing, we know it's correct, but maybe we don't know why it's correct. Now, in the case of an English teacher, well, I know why something is correct because I have the education and the training, and it's my job basically. But all of the native speakers know that something is correct without knowing that it's actually correct, or without knowing why it's correct. Why is this? Well, they've only heard the correct versions, so when they speak, they will say the correct version as well. So they won't make mistakes because they've never heard mistakes. This is the thing. So reading is fantastic for learning grammar because you'll be learning it subconsciously. You'll be involved in a story and you won't know that you're learning grammar, but you will, just by being exposed to correct English for pages and pages, hundreds of pages, tens of thousands of words. Now, speaking of words, the second thing that makes reading so good for your English is vocabulary. Again, in an average book, you've got between 50 and 80,000 words. Now, your brain will process those words. Again, subconsciously. It won't be a conscious effort, but your brain will be exposed to between 50 and 80,000 words. Now, of course, the majority of those words will be repeated, but what's fantastic is there will be a lot of vocabulary in there. So, as you're reading the book, there will be words that you don't understand. That's fine, it's normal. There'll be expressions, there'll be idioms, that's okay. Really, this is a technique about how you should read to learn vocabulary. When you're reading a book, you don't want to stop every time you don't understand a word and look in the dictionary. Why? Because, well, it breaks the flow of the book. The reason you're reading is to relax and enjoy yourself. English should be secondary, okay? Your first priority when you're reading is to enjoy a book, be involved in a story and everything else that reading brings. So you don't want to think about English too much. You should only stop and look at the word in a dictionary if you literally just don't understand the sentence or paragraph at all. So the brain is very clever, again, and it will be able to work out more or less what the meaning of the word is from the context, from the situation, and you'll get that from reading the story. So if there is a word that you don't understand, well, with a pencil you can just put a line underneath it or circle it, and then later you can check it in a dictionary after you've finished reading. But what you don't want to do is stop the flow of reading the story every time you don't understand a word. Only check it if you do not understand the sentence at all, and that risks you getting lost in the story. You don't want that, okay? So that's everything that you should need. You should be reading fiction every day. Okay, this is the thing that can really take your English grammar and vocabulary to the next level. All of my students that tell me that they read fiction, they have something that the other students just don't have. It's generally things related to word order, correct use of tenses, and fantastic range of vocabulary. And often I ask them, where did you find that word? How do you know that idiom? And they'll say, I don't know, I just know it. The reason is that I'm sure they got it from reading. So if you read, you will notice a huge jump in your level in a very short time. Okay? Now, you want to watch the next video. I've got a suggested video on the screen now. You want to watch it because this is really important. If you're going to start reading, you need to choose the perfect book. How do you choose that? Watch the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. See you in the next one.